Welcome to the Tuesday review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by Callum and James. How you going, guys?
Not bad.
Good. It's the last week of Spooktober for the show.
Yeah, well, we're recording this on November 1st, Tuesday, November 1st, so Spooktober is over, Halloween's come and gone.
But we have to report on our previous
week. We've been going hard into the horror movies the last week of Spooktober and getting into the spirit of things, so we'll talk about that. I mean,
it's probably the most energetic season for movie lovers. Like, Christmas is okay, but people only get excited about Christmas movies in the last week, I feel. Whereas, like, the minute October 1st hits, everyone goes nuts. Yeah.
Also, there's like more horror movies than there are Christmas movies, maybe. And there's probably more better horror movies than there are good Christmas. There's like good Christmas movies you can probably count on two hands,
yeah, maybe 2.5 hands.
Yeah, maybe a bit more.
But horror movies, you need like.
And horror movies also is kind of a wider genre because you can get into sci-fi and other stuff.
It ends up just being just about really horror, not so much about Halloween itself. It's just kind of just like
horror movie. Yeah, and they also make horror movies
set on Halloween
year round.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a Halloween movie, whereas a Christmas movie has to be set
during the season.
Yeah. I think though I still say one of the best horror movies is a Halloween as a season movie. Anyway, the OG Halloween.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
Like, as far as Halloween movie set on Halloween, I'm like, you can't get better than that. Anyway.
No, it's like
it's the quintessential Halloween movie.
Epitome of that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, last year, because the last 2 years, because we were in lockdown, especially last year, like, it was such a great time to just sit down. I watched so many horror movies, so many great movies came out on Blu-ray and 4K last year, and I was, watching all these great horror movies. And then this year, life's quote unquote back to normal, whatever that means.
For now.
But I will refuse to sort of not put in the effort to kind of do the same thing I did last year. Last year was easier because we were in lockdown, so it's like just watching movies all the time.
You didn't have any social obligations as such.
No, it's like working from home all the time, so you just kind of log off and start watching whatever.
You ever watch a movie in the background with your laptop open?
No, I can't.
He's not that kind of multitasker.
One, I don't believe in watching movies that way, and two, I couldn't focus on either thing.
So
I put in the effort this year. I was just like banging them out. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to watch horror movies because that's what I love to do on Spooktober.
See, Callum has that focus. We'll be playing a video game or whatever, and he's like reading his book, watching his phone, and playing a game at the same time.
No. Only during loading screens.
Okay, yeah, but I still can't do that.
But he also, he used to watch wrestling while reading, which wrestling you don't really have to pay attention to.
I still can't do that. I'm very single focused.
No, I find it very hard to read.
If I'm watching a movie, I'm watching a movie. If I'm playing a game, I'm playing a game.
Yeah. No, I don't.
I just, yes.
No.
Anyway, we watched Event Horizon.
Well, should we talk about Event Horizon first?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say spoiler warning, but the movie's like, over 20 years old.
25, yeah.
General spoiler warning for Event Horizon.
Yeah, it's a good movie. You should watch it.
It's available pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a lot of horror movies, especially me, over the whole of October. But on Halloween night, I'm like, well, we have to watch something.
Yeah.
Pick something
with a bit of pizzazz.
Yeah. So James had 2 new 4Ks for us to choose from.
Yeah, I had the Amityville Horror on 4K and Event Horizon on 4K. And I said, I get to choose the movie. You get to pick. You guys get to pick out of these two. Event Horizon was the safer option because it's like a much more entertaining, action-packed movie.
Yeah, especially because we watched it on the projector.
Yeah,
and it's a perfect projector movie. I would say it's in the way it's got some action, some
it's like lots of cool sets and models.
Sets, it feels very physical.
Spaceship stuff.
I feel like it was the perfect movie to watch on a projector, especially if you get if you have a home projector set up, you get the 4K. Like, even without all the Dolby Vision HDR, all the bells and whistles, if you got a budget projector, it still looked amazing. Yeah,
and it's like a kind of fun action kind of sci-fi horror. So it's it's got a lot going on, and it's a good
I didn't like. I've seen
It's
this
a good
movie.
group watch.
It is, and we've seen this movie probably, I don't know, like 5,
Yeah,
6,
I've seen
7,
it heaps
8
of times,
times,
yeah.
whatever. And I always forget, in a good way, how slow it is. Because I always think,
We've talked about it before.
Like,
We appreciate
we appreciate the slow discovery and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
I
But
do think it could be slower, and that's one thing. So we talked about this movie before. When it came out, it got terrible reviews. It didn't do very well. It got kind of trashed. And then when it came out on VHS and then later DVD, it got kind of a cult following, and it became like a bit more popular. I've always loved it ever since I first saw it years and years ago. But over the last few years, I feel like people have gotten on board and like, this movie's awesome.
it is awesome.
I think a big problem of it though is that originally it was like 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and the studio was like, no way, cut half an hour. So the director, Paul W.S. Anderson, had to like go back and like cut out a whole bunch of important stuff.
A lot of the hell stuff too.
Yeah, and then there's the problems with censorship and also just audiences not being comfortable with certain levels
You're
of
not meant to be
violence
comfortable with it. That's
yeah,
the
exactly.
point. Yeah.
But you know, just like in two ways. One, there's the whole like, oh no, think of the children. But then there's also like, oh, the studio can't make money if people are.
Yeah, if you slap an X on it, the studio can't.
You get the NC-17 in America. It's a kiss of death. So there's that part of it. But there's also a part of it where they're just like, he had to cut out a whole bunch of important character stuff, kind of slower setting things up, scenes, exposition scenes that I think would have helped the movie and made it a lot better. And he also only had a short time to edit it. And so I think, especially towards the end, it does start to wrap things up really quickly.
Yeah,
and
the escalation.
I feel like this
yeah.
movie could easily be 2 hours and a very comfortable,
2
well-paced
hours,
2 hours.
Yeah, there is a bit of whiplash when it hits the fan
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
And especially because like the whole thing is they get to the ship and then certain crew members start having visions, but then other crew members just don't have visions at all. I feel a lot of that's probably on the cutting room floor, or they didn't even get to shoot
We
it.
see just a little bit as well of what happened to like the previous crew or the crew they go to save.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen more of, like, I would say, the first journey through the gravity gate.
That would be a much interesting, like an interesting thing to explore, because the search and rescue team gets to the ship, the Event Horizon, and the first crew's gone missing. And so, like, discovering, it's like, you know, going through the logs and going, like, where do they...
Yeah, like, more from the logs.
And, like, learning about the old crew, and
like,
then...
Yeah, because we have a little bit of audio log sort of intrigue.
Yeah, it's only a very
video
little
log,
bit.
and, like, I would have liked more.
Yeah. Especially, that would add to the horror as well, because, like, if you start to get to know a person just by listening to their recordings and going through their personal effects, and then all of a sudden that person shows up as like an evil zombie or shows up dead, both the character in the movie and the audience can be like, it's more affecting. Yeah, and you get more connected to it, invested in it.
Famously, a lot of that sort of cut footage is destroyed essentially.
Yeah.
It was like a salt mine or whatever they decided to.
It's like, because DVD wasn't really a thing when the movie was made. I mean, they didn't really think to preserve any of the deleted scenes or the deleted footage. And so, like, the studio either just destroyed it or improperly stored it.
I think it was improperly stored in some sort of salt mine facility.
Yeah, it's like they did find some footage in, like, a salt mine. But, yeah, it wasn't well preserved. And the only, like, existing kind of footage is at, like, VHS quality, so you can't really reintegrate anything into the movie.
That's disappointing.
Yeah. But, I mean, as the movie stands, it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We were just appreciating the movie. You know, we hadn't seen it in 4K before. We'd seen the movie many times, but seeing it in 4K is, like, a whole different experience. And we just appreciate that kind of mid-90s special effects kind of action movie.
I've been watching a lot of the mid to late 90s science fiction / horror movies lately. And one thing they do so well that we remarked upon watching it is like the use of models You know, not
It's
in
the
this film,
perfect-
but also like the use of matte paintings.
Yeah.
To accentuate the scenes, and like you were talking about the production design,
It's just
they took their
movies-
time to properly design things and actually get a good layout that's consistent with the world they're trying to build.
It's like movies don't have like awesome production design anymore because movies, they don't spend the money on movies like this anymore. The big budget movies that do come out are all like CGI, green screen kind of superhero movies. So you don't get movies like this or Alien or similar kind of things. It's like just awesome set design, production design, costume design. It's like you can see where the money went.
Yeah, and it holds up.
Yeah, you watch the latest superhero movie and you're like, where did all that money go? Into CGI and the actor's paycheck,
accounting,
I guess.
You know, it's creative accounting.
And yeah, but you watch this movie and you're like, it might not be the biggest budget movie ever, but you can see where every penny of it went.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah, everything
also
feels so
ages well.
tactile.
It
And
ages
it
well.
ages well.
And the CGI that you do see on the screen is forgivable because everything that you can see they didn't take shortcuts.
Exactly. The only parts that don't age well are the CG parts, but they're so few and far between, and it's only used when really necessary.
It's only used. Yes, I was like, sorry, audience, we actually couldn't create the black hole, so we kind of had to use a bit of CG there. It's like, it's just the obvious stuff that you can't.
It's more like the floating.
Yeah, it's just the
floating
liquid,
goo
liquid,
and the explosions and.
But most of the explosions are practical.
Yeah.
Even the fire, like there's some really good fire effects. Like there's that.
When we're watching it, I'm like, real fire.
Yeah, because now like. I miss movies when they had like stuntmen, full body burn, stuntmen like on fire. I know it's dangerous and whatever, but you appreciate that. It's just like, wow, they went to all this effort. They set a guy on fire. It looks awesome. Now in movies, it's all CGI and it looks awful because CGI fire is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Fire and water is probably the hardest things. And fire looks awful in CGI.
Yeah.
And they do it all the time now.
Yeah.
And I hate it.
And it's just a lot cheaper to do it in reality.
I don't think it's probably just cheaper just to shoot it quickly and slap on some crappy CG effects. But the effort is much more appreciated when do it safely, obviously.
Yeah.
When you actually put the effort into practical elements. And when that guy is on fire, it's not just he's on fire, it's like so many different elements. There's makeup effects.
Yeah, I was going to say.
There's CG integrated. There's animatronics.
It's not
there's
like
so much going on.
It's not like an action movie where there's like the guy's on fire and he's like Wilhelm screaming and running down a corridor or whatever. No. It's like, no, you see it, he's covered in like burns and other prosthetic sort of makeup.
That scene came out Event Horizon came out 25 years ago.
Still holds up.
That guy on fire looks better than any guy on fire I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years.
100%.
Even like simple things like when a character turns around and they've got their eyes gouged out. Yeah. This movie came out 25 years ago. It looks better then than they do it
and
now.
Tanks of blood and like they would run that in CG these days. Like
probably
like when you have like sort of all the water, like there's big water scenes.
Yeah.
Like that probably wouldn't. They wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, they don't. And even the spacewalk scenes, like just the wire work, they don't really do it in the same way. It's all green screen. It looks like garbage.
Yeah, no,
now.
like Lawrence Fishburne is like kind of pulling himself or sort of on the wire between ships. That just would have been CG'd.
Yeah.
You know, like at least there's a feeling in that scene that he's pulling himself. Sure, there would have been green screen around, but he would have been sort of moving along the wire. Instead, if they did it again these days, it'd just be like him CG just sitting there while they animated it around him. You know what I mean? Somewhere in the distance, Ian McKellen is crying because this is not what he wanted to be as an actor.
And the thing is like they just wouldn't make a movie like this anymore. I mean, when's the last time we saw a big space movie? Interstellar was 2014.
Yeah, a while.
Gravity was 2013, and that was all CGI.
I didn't even see Gravity.
The Martian was 2015, 2016.
Yeah, that was a good movie. But that's a different kind of. That's a good movie with good special effects.
I mean, it is sci-fi, but it's also not sci-fi.
It's hard sci-fi.
The Martian. It's also not.
Martian,
it is spacefaring, but it's not spacefaring. It's obviously it's localized.
Yeah. But no, that's a good movie. But you know what I mean? Like, where's the alien? Where's the aliens? Where's the Event Horizon? Where's these kind of
Don't
movies.
forget, we got that new Predator movie. We don't talk
That
about
doesn't
That's
count.
not set in space.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's
not
not.
in space.
That's also terrible.
There was
Well,
Life,
I
I
don't
guess.
know.
Oh,
Everyone says
not
it's
the
good.
Hulu one. Not the Hulu one.
Which
the
new
other one, The Predator.
Oh, The Predator. No, that's.
There was Life. Do you remember that?
I remember thinking that was okay, but then
It
we just
wasn't-
never talked about it ever again. It's completely forgettable.
It wasn't that good.
Yeah, I think we were at the time. We were like, "Oh, that was enjoyable," but now I have no.
I don't care about it,
recollection
yeah.
or care about to ever watch it
Netflix
again.
released a couple, but I haven't seen them, so I don't know.
Yeah, so and that's the
Again-
thing is these movies, if they do come out, they go to Netflix, and it's all CGI.
Yeah.
And on top of that, obviously they wouldn't even dare to make it an R-rated horror movie,
No.
which this movie is, and like the scenes of gore we do get are pretty extreme, even in the small glimpses. And like we said, they were originally much more extreme, and we wish we could see that, more insane version.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like we talked about it, I think, last week and the week before. Not just horror movies, but movies in general. It's just not as hardcore anymore.
Yeah.
No,
You
well,
know?
we've talked about this. I think we probably talked about it when we talked about Smile and
we talk about Hellraiser,
they're all movies these days are made for a general family audience almost, or they can't
Yeah.
be too extreme.
like we've always talked about. We just repeat ourselves every episode, but every time a movie comes up, it's like here's
But
another
it's still-
example.
exactly. It still applies. It's
Yeah.
just furthering our point in
Yeah.
this instance.
But yeah, Event Horizons are great, and it ticks all my boxes because it's horror and sci-fi. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
it. Hello.
what's not to
Yeah,
like?
that's it.
And it's got a great cast, and it's like,
And it feels lived in, as we said. Like,
yeah, I appreciate that alien style of like realistic, tangible, lived-in
Sets, yeah.
future kind of design.
when even like it's the simple things in this movie too. Like when Sam Neill has to go and fix a conductor or something that broke, a resistor, whatever it is, and he opens a panel and it's like obviously it's this massive supercomputer, so he has to go crawling in like ducts.
Yeah,
And it looks sick because it's not just CG electronics on the wall. Like it's just like I'm sure they're just lit up whatever they do.
They lit up
panels,
panels,
but he's crawling through.
yeah.
And it's just really
Just
cool.
the gravity drive itself, that big rotating.
Exactly, it looks
thing.
amazing.
It's like they would do that in CGI now, and it would look like garbage. And they probably wouldn't even take the time and the effort to design it in that way, where it's got these like weird kind of this pattern on it,
Yeah.
Even at the start of the movie, as soon as the movie starts and Sam Neill wakes up and he's in his little pod on the space station, and I'm like, I appreciate they built this little room. It's got this pattern on the wall, this kind of padding, like the Alien, the Blade Runner Alien influence. I just appreciate that effort, and especially in 4K, these are the movies that look the best in 4K.
Yeah.
Shot on film, great production design.
Yeah, like as we said, we watched it without all the
Practical
bells
effects.
We watched it as is without the bells and whistles. We didn't have really HDR. We didn't have the Dolby Vision. We didn't have
Just standard
the Atmos.
projector, yeah.
Just standard projector, standard soundbar.
Yeah.
And it looked amazing.
Yeah.
Like the grain is nice. You can all the details on you can see like all the pores on the skin and then just
so
like the
good.
texture details on clothing.
Yeah.
Everything just looks amazing.
Yeah.
Again, if you watch a CG movie that's made with CG and blow it up that big, it's always going to look terrible for the most part.
Yeah.
You get the rubberiness of
You
it
get all the rubberiness and kind of
and
the fakeness.
we've talked about before, like now movies is all just flat digital cinematography, so they don't get that depth, that texture, that tangible quality because they don't do anything practically, so you don't get that.
Exactly, but this movie,
Yeah, so good.
Do you want to talk about the actual set you bought? Like the actual...
Oh, yeah. So they released like a limited edition Event Horizon 4K set. It's got like a hardcover slipcase with like the original, kind of like, I don't know if it's the original poster art, but it's just like, Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne on the front, that kind of artwork.
Yeah.
And then you pull out and it's got like a steel book in it with a really cool design. And the steelbook has like a slip cover, like a translucent slip cover. So there's like zombie hands or whatever on the slip cover, and then when you slip it off, obviously the hands go away, and you just left with the steelbook art, which is great. And then inside it's got like little poster cards, photo cards, and it came with a little
like a patch
for the ship, the Lewis and Clark
cool.
spaceship.
See, like you're
like
the kind
an
of guy.
iron-on patch.
You're the kind of guy that just wouldn't touch any of that stuff. Man, I'd put that on a jacket or something.
Yeah, see, I got all these special editions with all this cool stuff, and they're all like just I don't
like
do
if I had like a leather jacket or something, I'd be like, that's getting patched.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean,
for
that's the only.
But see, I'd have to have a jacket that it suits, and that I always like I want it to be on, and I want to wear it.
But that's such a nice thing, something you can actually use. Like it's a patch, you can put it on something. Yeah, that's cool.
It also had a little Event Horizon pin, which is cool, and had a poster of the blueprint of the Event Horizon ship.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Yeah, but I was talking about with you guys, I'm like, I mean, if you've listened to the show before, like I'm a big physical media collector, and we've talked about the importance of physical media just in terms of
we've talked about it on some
preservation
Saturday shows
or whatever.
Stuff like that. It's an issue at the moment.
Yeah, big issue now, especially but. Yeah, so it's like these are the kind of sets I live for, and as we've discussed last week and the week before and whatever, this is why I love movies. Movies like this, this is what keeps me alive, because honestly, everything else in my life is miserable, but watching Event Horizon in 4K, getting that 4K steelbook, it's just like, it's like a drug. It's like, my God.
It's so good. And also, it's the kind of thing we watch on the projector, but you could go home and watch it on your TV with the Dolby Vision and all that.
Oh, it would have been fine.
No, yeah, but
it would have been amazing.
Yeah, but you'll be able to appreciate some different things with, like, we appreciated it on the big screen, whatever, with all the details of the 4K disc. Yeah. But if we were to watch it on normal television, we'd have other things to appreciate too. You'd be able to see the Dolby Vision, HDR grading, and everything else. The colors, the colors really I think all that kind of stuff.
When we go to your place and watch on the projector, it's more for the cinema experience,
a
little theater. It's like the spectacle. Yeah, it's less about like we're getting the best quality, the best sound. No, it's just it's more about let's get together, let's eat junk food, and let's watch a movie on a big screen. Yeah, and not have to worry about going to the actual cinema.
Which it's. I have a nice telly, I enjoy the HDR, so but the projector, even without HDR, it is one of the best ways to watch a film. Like, especially older movies where you get that tangibility.
Two different things.
Because my setup up at home is pretty simple. Like I only got like a 50-inch TV, and I got like a little. It's not even a sound bar. It's just like a little speaker. But that's more than enough, and it looks and sounds fantastic when I'm at home. But watching on the projector is that different experience. It's that communal kind of big screen, quote unquote, experience. But after we finished, I went home and I watched all the special features on my TV, and I was just like, Event Horizon, awesome. But it's an awesome movie, and we've talked about it before because a few months ago or a year ago or whenever they announced they were going to make a TV show.
Apparently it's still happening, but no one's heard anything.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything since. And I remember we talked about it, and we were like, if they did this or they did that, if they could pull it off, it would be great. But I don't think they can. It'll suck. It'll definitely suck.
It'll probably suck. I think Paramount Plus is kind of new, so maybe there's some rights issues going on with like Amazon and Paramount, because it's a joint production between Paramount and Amazon. And I have a feeling we haven't heard anything because Paramount's like, I want it for my platform. Yeah, and Amazon's being like, that's not what we kind of like, there's probably a struggle on where it gets to go. Yeah. That's what I think's probably happening, because in the intervening year, Paramount's
the landscape changed.
The landscape's changed. But also, horror is a very hard thing to do for TV, I feel. It doesn't work that much. What's successful?
I don't think horror is a hard thing to do for TV. I think just streaming and TV shows now in general have you can't live up to a 90s practical effect movie, but also on top of that, making a long running, potentially 2, 3, 4 season, 10 episode season, whatever series out of a pretty simple idea. They could take it in many awesome directions, but they won't. one, budget limitations, but two, they just don't have the vision.
Yeah.
As we've seen with many of these streaming shows coming out.
That's true.
Yeah, and we've seen lately that like you can spend millions and millions on a show, and it'll still look terrible.
Yeah.
So it's not even a money issue at this point. It's like you said, it's more of a practical issue because I haven't seen The Lord of the Rings, but I have heard that there are some scenes which look less than ideal.
Like Rings,
and they spent billions of dollars
Rings
on
of,
maybe not
Rings
billions,
of Power is probably the best looking show, most impressive. Like you can see where they've spent the money. It still doesn't look as good as the Peter Jackson movie.
Yeah.
It still doesn't look as good as most 80s, 90s movies.
And that's the thing they have to kind of reconcile.
And that's the thing. And that's if this Event Horizon show does eventually come out, not only will the story probably be garbage, but it'll just be mostly CGI, mostly green screen. It'll look like any other show out there at the moment. It'll have the same flat digital cinematography. They're all we've talked about this before. All shows and movies now are just the same. It's all content to get subscribers, to get bums in seats, to make money. Event Horizon didn't do well because for many reasons, but that's a movie that it's like, oh, they made this movie to make a cool horror sci-fi movie, not to sell it to a streaming,
definitely. Yeah. No, yeah, I think it's good. I think it'd be impossible to do now, as you said.
Yeah, no.
Did you hear about A24 wants to make Crystal Lake prequel to Friday the 13th as a TV show?
No, please no.
So that'll be interesting.
Why don't they just make another movie? It's been more than 10 years since the last
I think they just want to get into the streaming.
Monkey paw,
this
James.
exactly,
Monkey paw.
This is exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
They want content for their streaming service.
I was thinking about this just before.
They're not making it because they want to make it. They're making it because they need subscribers.
It's funny because the best horror content streaming wise that's coming out is I mean, on one hand, I want to say Severance, knowing that it's not a horror show.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it.
But it's like on the thriller side of things.
Yeah.
But Midnight Mass, and I think the reason that was so successful is because it's simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everything Mike Flanagan done, Haunting of Hill House, I still think is the best thing he did, TV wise. Yeah, like
Midnight Mass has a couple of problems for me, but it's
Midnight Mass isn't. I don't think it's as good as Haunting of Hill House, and I have problems.
It's because they're relatively simple stories, relatively.
Yeah,
but also it's also done. He does things as practically as he can, as simply as he can.
Like, I'm sorry to listeners because we just repeat ourselves every week over and over again.
They keep giving us reasons to.
But we talk about it all the time. Story and characters are the most important part, and Mike Flanagan,
even in horror,
Mike Flanagan, he might, his pen might run a bit wild sometimes, but
he might monologue just a bit too much.
Bit much. But like most of the time, it's like, okay, I'm invested in these people on the screen, whatever. Well, speaking of horror TV, I mean, I ended up finishing the Chucky season 1 of the Chucky series.
Ooh, any good?
Yeah, it's good. It's a lot of fun. You have to watch all the movies because this is a direct continuation of the show. Is a direct continuation of the storyline of the movie.
I recently got FOMO of James's set, so I bought it myself.
It's like when we talked about it like last week or whenever. When you hear about Chucky, it's like you get an idea of it. And you're like, okay, it's a slasher movie with a killer doll, whatever. And then you watch them, and you're like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And that's why, when I talked about with you, you're like, all right, I'm ordering it now. And the same thing happened with me. With my friend told me the same thing. He told me, oh, it's really interesting, this, that, and the other, and I ordered it. So it's that kind of thing. It's just like you have
the real curse of Chucky, huh?
Yeah, that's the it's contagious. You have to pass it on to another person. But yeah, it's just so interesting as a franchise, as I discussed last week, because Don Mancini, the original writer and creator of the character, and like he wrote all the movies and he directed the last few, and he's like the timeline, like there's recurring characters and recurring actors. And it's all set in the same sort of timeline, whatever. And he always, instead of just doing the same movie over and over again, like Friday the 13th, he's always trying to shake things up a little bit, and do things a little bit different. And that's what's so great about this show is it's like, now it's a bit more long form, and he's always been more interested in the characters. We talked about it, I think, when we were talking about Hellraiser, where it's just like most horror movie slasher villains, iconic villains, are like silent, Michael Myers-esque, Jason Voorhees-esque.
Chucky runs his mouth, doesn't he?
Yeah, Chucky runs his mouth, but Don Mancini is more interested in Chucky as a character. And so after a while, because Chucky's no longer really scary because we've seen him so much, it's like now he's writing Chucky as the main character. And usually, like, I don't like that when they try to make the villain the main character. I hated when they made Hannibal the movie, not the TV show. TV show was amazing. But Hannibal is like, and then they made the prequel Hannibal Rising, and it was like an anti-hero, and I was like, what? No,
he's not an anti-hero. He eats people.
The Silence of the Lambs, he's on screen for what, like 5 minutes? Like he shouldn't be the main character.
Yeah, no.
So usually I don't like that, but because Don Mancini, he's like, let's just go for it. He's just like, we're gonna have Chucky doing this, and then Chucky's gonna get a girlfriend, and then this, and then that, and then and he's.
Is he still evil in the show?
Yeah,
good.
That would be a
I was say, don't turn
stupid idea to be like, actually he's not so bad.
The puppet master thing, where it's like he has to team up again with another puppet to take out the more evil puppet. It's like, God.
Well, I mean, because it's only the first season, and the second season is airing now, so I'm looking forward to watching the second season when it finishes at the end of the month. But yeah, like, this is what's so interesting. Like, they can go any direction, and they've got 7 movies worth of characters and story to build upon, and they've introduced new characters that are interesting. And like I said, Don Mancini is interested in the characters and not so much. The horror elements are still there and still fun, but he's not so much just how do we kill people. Yeah, it's just like, how do we get these characters in this situation, and how do they develop as characters and their relationships. And also what's interesting is Don Mancini is a gay man, and so the movies over the years increasingly have more of like LGBT representation up until you get this show, which is a 2021 show, and it's just like, so you get more exploration of like gay characters.
Chucky goes to a gay bar.
Yeah, because I suppose
Chucky's first boyfriend.
Yeah, even Chucky's just like, well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but even he's just like, I accept that kind of thing. I'm not a monster.
Yeah, wink. Because I suppose when the movies first started coming out, it was a very different social landscape.
Yeah, like the first 3 movies, there's not really that element. But then the 4th movie onwards, you start to get gay characters in there. And after all these years, after 20 years, you have this show, and we're in the
modern,
the right cultural era or whatever. Whereas now you can start exploring these kind of characters maturely and properly.
Yeah.
So it's just an really interesting franchise, and it's come to a really interesting.
I'm gonna have to start my Chucky journey.
Yeah, because you think of other horror franchises, and it's the same movie over and over again for years, and then it dies, and then they reboot it or remake it. And then it dies again, and they reboot it and remake it. And this one is the same thing for 30 years, and now it's a TV show that'll continue on for the next hopefully few years.
The only things I can think of that are any similar are like Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which got cancelled.
But even that was 3 movies and then nothing, and then a remake, and then...
it hasn't been consistent.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with the Exorcist TV show. Again, as I said, it's not
consistent.
That's a big time jump.
Yeah, that's the same writer hasn't consistently kind of stayed with it, and it's not recurring characters or whatever. There's no other franchise, even non-horror franchise, there are not really many like this.
I'm going to have to continue into Spookvember.
Trademark the Tuesday Review Spookvember. Keep it going.
Let's
keep the horror going.
Keep horror going.
Do you guys want to talk about any horror stuff you've been watching?
I do. Can continue.
I finished watching Phenomena.
Yes, you got it right.
I got it right for once. By Dario, 1985 by Dario Argento, starring Jennifer Connelly as the lead.
Yeah.
An Italian horror movie. Now I've watched Suspiria. That's about my total
Argento
experience with Italian horror movies.
Yeah.
So I knew what I was getting in for because they're all similar. Dario Argento is, you know what you're in for.
He's the
maestro,
the Godfather. Yeah, the maestro.
I didn't hate it. I think Suspiria is a stronger movie. I'm sure
definitely.
most people would agree with me.
Yeah.
Phenomena seemed... I don't know what the budget was, but Suspiria seemed to have more of a budget behind it. I don't know if that was just him.
I think Suspiria
production
might
design
have
was a
used,
bit stronger.
Yeah, I think Suspiria has a stronger production design, better
yeah, it was just put
style,
together.
more stylistic.
It was an interesting film. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. It's not my favorite of his films. There were some interesting moments where Jennifer was following a firefly, and she's moving sideways across the screen, and it has this really weird electro music going, and it was like it was from a video game.
We talked about it last
week. I thought that was pretty cool. The last 15 minutes went crazy.
Yeah,
I appreciated that. That was interesting. It lacked. I mean, I don't know whether maybe I'm not the right audience for it, but it didn't shake me like it shook some commentators online in the last 15 minutes. I was just because I was reading about it people like, oh, it's crazy. You wait till this. I'm like, it was okay.
The end does go crazy.
It goes crazy,
but it's not going to. You're not gonna.
Yeah, it's not gonna shake me. You know what I mean?
It's just like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, It was interesting.
Like, I like it, but it's not his strongest film, and it's kind of like a lot of horror movies, and especially Italian horror movies or old Italian movies in general, just really unnecessarily convoluted.
Yeah.
And I think this movie, it doesn't go all the way fall into that trap, but it does have the element of there's like a lot going on, and there's like bugs, and then there's this, and there's Donald Pleasance, and Jennifer Connelly. Weird. She's at a boarding school, and then this, and it's like, and then there's a killer, and she has to investigate, and she can do. It's just like, and then the end goes nuts, and there's this, and then there's that, and it's like, okay, just pick an element. Yeah, there's a chimp. It's like, wait, where did this bloody monkey come from?
And then the chimp with the scalpel saves her, and I'm
like, what? Yeah, and you
kind of weird.
You're just like, isn't there a little person?
Yeah, he's the villain. Yeah,
it's just like, where did this guy come from?
He's like a deformed. Yeah, spoilers for Phenomena. It's like a deformed child is the villain, and it's like, what does the mother say? He's not a mother. He's just, what does she say? He's just different or something. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God.
We talked about it last week and many times before. I love it when movies go nuts, but they still have to do it well.
There's also something that makes sense.
And also it's just like, it can get a little convoluted.
The only other problem I had was because they film Italian movies silently and then they dub the voices in. So you get that. The idea is that the volume of the dialogue is loud as it needs to be. But in this instance with Phenomena, I found that they didn't always get the lip syncing correct.
Yeah.
So there was a few moments where I thought I was watching like an anime dub.
Oh yeah, it depends on the actor and the character. Like Jennifer Connelly dubs herself, so that's all pretty much fine. But then there's some of the background characters who are like Italian actors or whatever, who are then dubbed by American actors, and that's when you start to get that. Doesn't I'm a huge Italian movie fan, spaghetti westerns.
It wasn't the worst.
Movies, Giallo.
It's just, I noticed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's something if you get used to.
Yeah.
I don't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
If I showed this movie to someone, just rando off the street, they would probably just laugh and say, "Turn it off, please."
Yeah. No, I didn't hate it. It's just like there were some moments where it was so noticeably out of sync that I was like, "Oh, come on!"
Like Italian horror movies, like Giallo, you can't just recommend that to a rando or even like a horror movie fan.
Yeah,
giving them Suspiria might scare them off because of it's just a very specific kind of horror movie, specific type of Italian horror movie. But I love that genre. I've got a lot of those movies. I think my favorite Argento film is Deep Red, so you should probably watch that one next because I think that's my favorite of his.
Yeah, okay.
I really like that. It's like a murder mystery.
You never watched the sequel to Suspiria? Well, sequel / reboot to Suspiria, did you?
The remake?
reboot. No, it's like a sequel. It has the original characters in it.
Does it?
It does, yeah. So
I watched it and I thought it was a remake. It's a straight up remake.
No.
We're gonna have to talk about this off air because we're running out of time, and it's almost. I'm 100% sure it's a remake. But anyway, I did watch it. I thought it's a very long film, 2.5 hours, I think.
Yeah, look, it's a reboot, but it has
the 2018 version of Suspiria. Last year, like I'd seen the original Suspiria many times.
Yeah,
one of my favorite Italian kind of horror movies. I got the 4K for that because the remake came, or the 2018 version came out. And I was just like, why do they make a new one? Not really interested. I might watch it, whatever. Last year, the 4K for the original movie came out, or I bought it last year.
Oh, did it look good?
It looks amazing.
Should watch that on 4K soon. Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, I watched that, and then I watched the 2018 version, which I got on Blu-ray. And, you know, the original is, like I said, amazing. It's like only 90 minutes. The new one is like 2.5 hours long, and I'm like, what the hell is this? But the first like hour or so, I was like, oh, I love this. I can see why they did this version, this take on it, this different take. I'm like, this isn't just a remake. It's a new reimagining. I dig it. And then the movie kept going and going, and then the end was garbage. I hated the end.
It was divisive,
Yeah. So I think if they could have just stuck to where they were going at the start. And I feel like you have to watch the original to appreciate the new one almost.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that, like, because Suspiria is quite an old movie now. It's interesting that there's still meat on the bones. Like, he sets up such an interesting world that you can kind of...
Yeah, because you got the coven. Yeah, you got the coven of witches and the history of the coven or whatever's going on. And that's what I liked about the new version of, like, they kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah.
There's more of that.
Yeah.
But then the movie just kind of falls apart. It's really long and then it just falls apart. Yeah, but...
I'd like to see more Italian horror movies kind of shape things a little. Because especially like Dario Argento's movies, he seemed to have a restricted budget. So he had to be creative with the way they did. Like we've talked about it before, back in the day when you're like a dangerous filmmaker, you had to kind of draw outside the lines because you wanted something to look a certain way. It's just like some of the best albums made in music, music that was made in desperation. Because it was like, it's either you win or you lose. It's like... It's that kind of... Because now there's safety nets everywhere. Everyone's getting bankrolled. It's like... We need dangerous filmmakers to be making horror movies specifically.
Yeah.
Because that's where you get the... that's
creativity.
where you... In a way, Barbarian's not a great example. But that's where you get like some of these... Like the X's. It's like this...
Well,
maybe not dangerous.
You know me,
but...
you know me, I wasn't that biggest fan of X. But yeah, we need rebel, quote-unquote, filmmakers. Yeah. We talked about it with like Cruising and stuff, like William Friedkin.
Someone with the energy of Herzog.
Yeah, that era of like 70s New Hollywood. It's like it felt dangerous.
We don't feel danger anymore.
Yeah, movies don't feel dangerous at all anymore.
And like to me, like a CG monster doesn't feel dangerous to me.
No,
you know, like
no, of course not.
No, the real dangerous man.
Well, yeah, but
we'll be back right after this break. You're back on the Tuesday review. We're talking things horror TV at the moment. We're talking about Suspiria, pardon me.
Well, we already talked about. We finished that. You guys want to mention any of the horror stuff you've been watching?
I did. It's still airing, but I'm watching American Horror Story New York. And it's an interesting one to me because it's not particularly... There's no horror monster in the show. It's a serial killer.
Yeah.
And usually with American Horror Story, it's kind of a little bit more supernatural, a little bit more kind of...
They might reveal something at the end.
They might, and you know, Ryan Murphy always shits the bed at the end.
Yeah.
Usually the back half of his shows are worse than the first half of his shows.
You always watch these kind of shows, like anything with Ryan Murphy's name on it, I avoid like the plague. I'm like not interested. That's why I didn't watch that Dharma show, because he was a producer on it. But I've heard his...
for a second, I misheard you. I thought Jeffrey Dahmer was a producer on the show.
I mean,
I was like risky route for Netflix to
American. I would watch Jeffrey Dahmer's American Horror Story. No, but yeah, like apparently his touch on the Dahmer show, Ryan Murphy's touch on the Dahmer show, is very minimal. But even then, I was like not interested.
Yeah. But I'm more interested. I probably would have given it a miss if it wasn't that basically the new American Horror Story is a giant rip-off of William Friedkin's Cruising, which had me interested.
Was it based on a book?
Yeah. So the movie
Cruising was based on a book,
a memoir kind of book.
But then we were talking about last night off air, and Nathan was telling me it's like a direct rip-off of Cruising.
There are some scenes that are just ripped straight out of the movie.
And I'm like, maybe they got the rights to the book.
I couldn't see anything. Like I tried looking it up, but I couldn't find anything. But they may have.
Yeah.
Because maybe...
at what point does it become copyright?
Yeah, at what point are there going to be lawyers involved?
Because there's so many movies that copy or shows that copy scenes from other movies and shows that are not parody.
No, but for instance, there's a scene in Cruising and a scene in American Horror Story New York that are exactly the same, in which there's a suspect in custody. Where like an African-American, specifically African-American sort of sergeant, a big built guy comes in like a jockstrap and a cowboy hat and like assaults the suspect. And then he just walks out and no one says anything about it. And no one acknowledges that it happened. Kind of, I guess, to spook out the suspect.
Because no one will believe the suspect.
No one who believes saying, a big black guy came in and beat me up and he was wearing a jockstrap and a cowboy hat. And it's like, it's meant to be kind of like outlandish, right? And the exact same scene happens the exact same way in both.
I'm sure there's been essays and documentaries made about this. At what point does homage become
exactly? And that's what I'm finding
copyright infringement.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm finding interesting about this new season.
Yeah.
So I wonder how far it's going to go.
I'm assuming that some of it's homage, but then other parts might just be they have their finger on the same pulse. But the problem is, if you're a showrunner, you also need to be aware that you're using original material. You need to try to be making original material, because do you want to be known as that guy in Hollywood circles that just rips off other people who doesn't have any original thoughts? Because if they're not, as far as I just looked it up just then, they're not officially drawing from the book. So if they are, as Nathan said, doing like a 1-for-1 kind of thing with Cruising,
certain scenes,
and not just the book but the movie as well.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, So I'd be wary.
Scenes that Commie Friedkin probably created.
Yeah, I'd be wary that do you really want that reputation? Probably not.
I'm sure because they're both based on things that actually happened, right? There'd be a little bit of like, well, can you copyright an event that happened? I'm like, but it's based on a book, which is a little bit more interesting.
It's also like, regardless of reputation, this is like the 10th season.
Yeah,
and
10 or 11.
At this point, they're probably just doing whatever.
Yeah, but it's more. It feels like there's almost more freedom in this season because it deals with topics that I guess he was saying relating to, but with the Chucky things, LGBT kind of things, it's more open. It's more, not that I think Ryan Murphy ever had a problem with that, right?
No.
But it's just interesting to see a more long form kind of exploration of the specifically like the killings that happened around the heavy leather scene in New York in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And the whole kind of, there's a lot of,
it seems
it doesn't hide away from like the homophobia as well. It's not cleaned up. There's a lot of kind of nastiness, and it's still kind of very true to how it was.
It seems like, I mean,
obviously it's not as graphic as Cruising.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, anything Ryan Murphy touches, not interested. And one of the reasons I never got into American Horror Story, because it always seemed like they would come up with a cool horror idea, and then they would just run it into the ground. For 10 episodes.
It never quite paid off.
And they're on AMC. Yeah,
FX maybe?
They're on FX, which you can have gore, but you can't have swearing and you can't have nudity, and you're not really allowed to do anything. Yeah. And so these shows, it's just like, well, what is the point of this?
Yeah.
I think they'd be better if it was I feel like their ideas should be maybe 4 hours long, that's it.
Also, just be better if it was an HBO show.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an interesting. I would love to watch it, like a horror anthology where each season is different. Great.
I've skipped a lot of seasons of this show. This is the exception because I'm just interested in seeing where it's going. Because it's the whole kind of thing of like, I've seen this movie. You know what I mean?
This doesn't seem to be the best way to do another kind of cruising.
Cruising
style.
Too. Electric Boogaloo. So that's the only thing I'm watching recently that's horror related.
Yeah. I did watch Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, the horror anthology that came out just recently. That was good. I liked every episode was good.
Which one was the best?
I personally liked the last two the most.
I haven't seen any yet. I need to get on it.
Yeah,
they're only like an hour each, right?
They're an hour each, and there's 8 of them, so you can bang them out pretty quickly. Yeah, I liked them all. They're all good. They're all kind of one-off little horror stories, and each one kind of directed by a different kind of horror director or genre director, and so that was cool. You get to see something a little bit different each time. I think the last two were my favorite, because the second last one was directed by Panos Cosmatos, who did Mandy and Beyond the Black Rainbow. So it's just all vibes, just synth music, kind of cool, kind of neon lit. Peter Weller's in it, who I love. So that just ticked all my boxes. And then the last one was directed by Jennifer Kent, who did The Babadook and The Nightingale. And that was just a really nice kind of, haunted house story, but like the main character was grieving her dead child, and so there was that grief element. And she's also an ornithologist. Is that the right word?
That is a word.
She, bird scientist.
Yeah, ornithologist, yeah.
So that was an interesting element of that, and I really liked that. That was a very emotionally powerful episode.
Did you end up watching The Night House yet, Callum?
No.
She watched The Night House. It's really good. But yeah, so... But all the episodes were good. I enjoyed them all. David Pryor, who directed The Empty Man, which we talked about, he did an episode which is about like an autopsy, and then some weird, crazy stuff happens. That was good. No, I enjoyed it. It's a good horror anthology, and I hope they make another one next October.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I think there's fertile ground for that kind of anthology for horror.
I mean, we talked about when like Love, Death and Robots came out. Any anthology is just like cool, because you get like little tastings of different things that normally wouldn't get a big mainstream show or movie. You get like these little weird things that usually you wouldn't see.
Yeah. Anthologies are just a really good creative outlet. So you can do things that don't have to fit that specific form.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you don't have to make 8 episodes. You don't have to make you don't have to make a 2-hour movie. It can be whatever. Yeah. Whatever suits the project.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, as much as we trash Netflix a lot of the time, like they do still have a lot of good stuff.
And they do it to themselves.
Yeah, no, it's their own fault.
They do it to themselves, so, when they might delete Cabinet of Curiosities Season 1 for next October.
Well,
so get on board now while we still have it. Yeah, oh, God.
So that's the thing. They still have good stuff on there, though. I think there's still a lot of...
Look, there's so much on Netflix that everyone's going to find something they like eventually. Yeah, right? You're always going to find something.
But I mean, just in terms of us, because we're always complaining, it's like they're doing all these stupid things, but it's like there's still, I always find myself going like, oh, I'm going to watch that. I'm going to,
as much as we hate ourselves doing it.
Their scattering of ideas does sometimes stick, even if they mostly miss.
Yeah, well, when you throw everything at the wall, a couple of things are going to stick.
Basically.
Yeah.
Is that all we've got for horror?
Oh, I've got like 20 movies, but I mean, do you guys have anything else?
I don't have anything else. Throw them out, and then we'll see if anything spurs conversation.
All right, I'm going to skip a whole bunch. Skip that. All right, I'll do a double-pronged thing here. There's a movie called Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, which is a movie, came out in 2006. It's one of those cult horror movies, like low-budget horror movies that you always hear about on the internet and stuff. Of like, oh, you should watch this movie. It's really cool, kind of underrated, underseen horror movie. It's one of those movies you just kind of hear whisperings on the internet. And this year I finally decided, well, it's the best time to watch it. I'll finally get around to it.
So what's it about?
It's like a mockumentary about like college
Professor?
group of college kids making a documentary about a real life slasher villain. Like
Okay.
if Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and
Like
were
real
real,
dudes, yeah.
they go follow this guy around and he shows them the tricks of the trade.
I think this is on
And-
Shudder, maybe.
I'm sure it probably would have been
Yeah.
at some
Is
point.
it
at
is
least.
it somewhat analogous to like Creep? Like what is it?
Well, I mean, Creep, the guy invites
Yeah.
the thing and then he does weird stuff. But this is more like they're following him around as if he's. It's based on the premise that he's a real life slasher villain.
Yeah.
And that he's showing them how he does things. And so it's kind of a meta commentary on slasher movies, and he kind of shows them, he's just like, oh, you know, I have to do a lot of cardio because, like, you know, all these teenagers are running away from me and I have to keep up with them, but I also have to do that, you know, walking thing where I don't run after, you know, and it's got that kind of thing where it's just like, he's like, here's how I set up traps so that, you know, it looks like I'm there, but I'm over here. And it's kind of this kind of funny, kind of meta.
I'm adding this to a watch list now.
It's worth watching. I can see why people like it and why it's got that cult following. It's a fun kind of, not found footage, but that mockumentary style and that meta commentary on slasher movies. And then there's another movie. I had never heard of this movie. Came out in 2013. It was originally called The Borderlands, but it's also been released under the name Final Prayer. It's a kind of mockumentary found footage movie. And I never heard of it. Most found footage movies are bad, I would say. But I had this one recommended to me, and it's about a priest investigating a potential like supernatural event or miracle at a small church in like the English countryside, and they kind of set up cameras to see if they can, you know, see if there's any supernatural entity or whatever, and the listening devices, and it's about them, you know, trying to investigate this, and you know, spooky stuff keeps happening, and then they discover there's something creepy going on at the church, and it was actually really effective.
You said it was mockumentary, so is it like a is it like a black comedy?
No. This one's dead serious. Whereas Leslie Vernon was a mockumentary, and it's more like wink, wink, meta.
Yeah.
This one's like a found footage movie.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get you.
They're documenting things. It's all told from the perspective of
of
body
documentary
cams
footage,
and surveillance cams.
Yeah. That sounds really
because
interesting.
for the Vatican, they're documenting their investigation, so that if anything ends up being true. That sounds
really interesting. Where did you see this one?
I flew the black flag.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as I can tell, it's not streaming anywhere. It's
Classic,
it's a very low budget. Like, I'd never heard of it.
No, I haven't heard of it either.
Final Prayer.
It's originally called The Borderlands, but it's also released under the name Final Prayer. Came out in 2013.
Interesting.
Okay.
So it was actually quite good. You know,
Yeah.
found footage movies, most of them
Mostly miss,
a miss, and a lot of the reason people make them is because they're kind of easy and cheap
so
to
they
make.
think, yeah.
Yeah, but you still have to make an effective.
Yeah, it's
story,
because it's such an interesting medium. It makes it even harder to do it well because there's so many more factors you have to think about. Because like when you're making a traditional movie, you know, me the expert, you know, you have an idea about the way they look because you've seen a million movies before. Yeah. But with found footage, it's not that common. Like, I should say big budget ones, like well-made ones, well-produced ones aren't that common.
I mean, the whole point is that they're so cheap to make.
Yeah.
But you still have to have
a vision for it.
Yeah, a vision and
be able to have the talent to execute it.
Story and characters and whatever. Yeah. You can't just cheap out and be like, oh, jump scares because camera, you know, and whatever. Yeah. But this one was actually quite well done, and the ending was pretty effectively spoopy.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got like 3 or 4 movies I wanted to mention.
Go for it.
Yeah. Should we just keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
All right. I'll skip that. I saw a movie called In Fabric, which I had been meaning. It came out in 2018.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I had been meaning to see it since it came out, and I just never got around to it. And I finally got chance to see it. It's about like a divorced woman in her 50s who's like looking for a new lease on life, a new love in her life, and she finds this red dress at a department store. And it's cursed. It's haunted. And so people start dying and whatever, and she starts getting, you know, seeing things, whatever. But it's told in this kind of, you know, retro, kind of giallo-esque, kind of stylized way, and it gets increasingly more absurd and more funny. And yeah, I just really liked it. It's like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it without spoiling it, but it's just got this kind of fascination with, like, you know, like 70s fashion and, you know, like creepy store mannequins.
So is it set in modern day or the 70s?
It's set in modern day, but it's got this kind of retro style. It's like a retro feel,
yeah.
Yeah, and it gets kind of increasingly absurd as this dress kind of follows people around and tries to kill them. And yeah, it's got this kind of creepy giallo, like 70s style, but also like it kind of just gets funny. And it's also weird, and
it's good. We need weirdness.
Yeah, I like weird.
Yeah, everyone likes weird.
What
else we got?
Oh, well, I watched the Amityville Horror original in 4K because I had that.
I don't know if I've seen the OG.
It's awesome.
I might have, but I don't remember.
I like... it's one of those movies that's kind of... What's the word? Personal, important to me. Because
I've also dreamed about killing my family.
Yeah, because I also tried to kill my family with an axe. Because
representation.
Like, yeah. No, because like me and my sister don't get along. Like we're the classic sibling rivalry, but we both like horror movies. So when we were kids, the only things we could kind of agree on was watching horror movies. And the Amityville Horror, the original 1979 version, was like one of those movies we saw when we were kids. And, you know, when you're a kid, it's the most scariest thing you've ever seen. Yeah. Now it's a bit quaint. But back then, when we watched it, it was like, oh my God, so scary. And then, of course, we knew it was based on a supposedly true story.
Which makes it even scarier.
Yeah. And then we read the book that it's based on, which is this quote-unquote non-fiction book about what happened.
Was the book any good?
I loved it.
I've never read it.
And, you know, my sister is not a reader, and like I said, we don't get along, but we both watched the movie and we both read the book. And so we were kind of invested in this kind of true story. Then they made this creepy movie. And then there's like the 2005 remake with Ryan Reynolds, which is whatever. But we kind of just love this story and this, you know, event, supposedly true event. And so I'd seen the movie many times, but mostly just on like DVD or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like I got it as soon as I saw it on 4K. I was like, I gotta get it.
Yeah. Have you watched it on 4K?
I did. I watched it.
How was the transfer?
It looked amazing.
Awesome.
As all good movies made on film do.
Yeah, they did a really good job restoring it. It was released by a boutique American label called Vinegar Syndrome. They release kind of like cult movies.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, cult movies, kind of like weird B movies, underground movies. But they like actually properly restore them from the film elements, and it looked amazing. When I was a kid watching this movie on DVD, I never thought it could look.
Yeah.
When you're watching The Godfather or Casablanca or Wizard of Oz, you're like, one day this movie will look as good as it did on the big screen. But when you're watching Amityville with your sister on your little box TV in the late 90s, early 2000s, you're not thinking, I'm like, this movie's going to be amazing on the big screen. But watching on 4K, it was just like...
Blew you away, yeah.
It's like watching it fresh.
Yeah. I think I'm sure I've said this on air, but I know we talked about it off air. Watching a movie on Blu-ray or 4K that you've only ever seen on VHS or TV or DVD is like watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the movie, even dodgy movies, you watch them on 4K and you're like, holy crap, it's like I've never seen this.
Because it's like the way it's meant to look in a way.
Yeah.
It's like that clean look that you want.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had this conversation we had this conversation yesterday where it's like, At what point 4K is almost the perfect final, I would say final format, in the way that a lot of movies they're not made for anything past 4K, right?
No,
I mean,
anything past 4K is kind of superfluous.
Yeah,
it's not
like
really.
I know technically a movie on 70mm film print or whatever, sure, I can get 8K out of it, but am I really gonna be able to? I know we people probably said the same thing on DVD to Blu-ray, but again, diminishing returns.
It's also exactly,
especially in the realm of now we're in digital film. Movies going forward, it's just too much. Yeah. So it's like 4K is fine.
It's also like, what can the human eye can't even see above a certain resolution. So at what point is it's like, all right, we got to call it the quits.
Yeah, exactly.
I think 4K is more than enough.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, if 8K TVs were cheap and 8K movies started coming out and they were cheap, sure, that would be great, but that's not going to happen, especially anytime soon.
Especially, that leads to another problem as well. When you got disc size, right? You already pretty much can't get Blu-ray discs. They're very hard to get on themselves. And they're not as cheap. Blank ones. And they're not as cheap. The consumer market isn't there as for, we'll say, home movies with 4K.
I mean, it's 4K. 4K discs are impossible to find.
Blank 4K Blu-rays. And what kind of disc format are we going to need for 8K? And what kind of... Yeah. Because I was in Hollywood, they don't use disc, right? They use hard drives. But then, as far as 8K...
It's like with
discs, the costs, like, I feel like as well, I know, you know, technology gets cheaper over time, but the disc cost alone would double, if not be more expensive than double for manufacturing sort of side of things as well.
Well, that's why a lot of movies still don't come out on Blu-ray or 4K, because it's just cheaper just to press a DVD.
Yeah. And DVD is still the prevailing format in most of the world.
Yeah. So it's like, 8K, I can't imagine any company being like, this is going to be cost effective.
I wouldn't even know where to buy one, I guess, just online. It's like you can't even buy 8Ks in stores.
No, they're not made.
No, but that's what I'm saying is even if they were available, no one has an 8K TV.
Yeah, what a waste. Yeah, I mean, what a waste to spend that money on an 8K TV.
They're trying to push it though. You can buy 8K TVs.
Yeah, because they're like, watch sport in 8K. I'm like,
you can watch this one. You're paying 20 grand to watch this one thing.
Yeah,
I'm sure there are people who do that.
Yeah. Watch the sweat drip down someone's face. You're like, yes, 8K.
That's what this is. 8K was not made for film nerds. It was made for sport nerds.
Yeah. Basically, that's the only thing I can think. That's the only kind of person I think will be able to get anything out of it.
Very limited. It seems extreme.
Yeah, it's very
8K
excessive
for sport. Like,
yeah,
what
it's very expensive. Excessive.
Yeah.
Anyway,
4K supremacy.
Yeah, that's it. 4K
but Amityville Horror, it's a great movie. Obviously it's like dated in its style, but that's what I love about it. And I love, the creepy stuff that happens to the family in the house. The house itself is just creepy with the kind of windows that look like eyes. Yeah. And the real life murders that happen there. And then, I love this, like when I read the book and thought it was all real and
that's the scariest part. That'll keep you up at night.
Yeah, and just the things that happen to him in the house, and it's always stuck with me. And the movie has some really cool bits in it that I really love. So yeah, that was good.
Yeah, very good.
All right, one more thing, and then I'll shut up. I watched so many damn horror movies, and now that I'm all horror movied out, so I'm gonna spend November.
Give yourself whiplash and watch some Christmas.
No, November's just going to be like other movies, and then December will be Christmas movies. But as we discussed, I think there's less good Christmas movies. And anyway, I'm going to take a break. But I did watch one movie a few days ago, which I had heard about. It's called Possession. It came out in 1981. Ooh. And it's got Sam Neill, who was also in Event Horizon. And it's one of those movies you hear about. It's like, oh, this is a really cool movie, weird movie. It's a crazy movie. It's directed by a Polish director, Andrzej Zulawski, I think.
This film's in the zeitgeist at the moment.
Yeah, and
I've seen people on Twitter talking about it.
Yeah, like I've heard about it over the last however many years. Like, you gotta see this movie, it's weird, whatever. And I never got around to it. And I got it on Blu-ray a little while ago. I can't remember exactly when. But I got this like limited edition hardcover Blu-ray with like a slip case, and you slip it out, and it's got the disc, and it's got a little book. It's really nice.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, it's Halloween, Spooktober. I might as well watch this movie. And it's directed by a Polish director. It was shot in Berlin. Sam Neill's in it. Isabelle Adjani, who is French, she's in it. So it's got this weird international vibe. It's all in English. It's the director's only English film. And the first 45-ish minutes, it's like a really intense domestic drama. It's like Kramer versus Kramer or Marriage Story on crack. You're like it's about this couple who are living in Berlin in a small apartment, and they've got a little kid and a little son, and they're divorcing, and they're just at each other's throats, yelling and hitting each other, and it's like it's like a domestic drama, but there's something weird going on.
Yeah.
Then the movie keeps going, and it gets weirder and weirder, and they start introducing horror elements and I don't know, sci-fi elements, if you want to call it that. And then the end, it becomes X-Files elements. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
That's awesome.
I'm sitting there jaw dropped, scratching my head, going what the hell is this movie? I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was awesome.
Again, it's a movie added to my watch list, but there's no way for me to watch it on the streaming system. So
you can borrow my copy.
I might have to borrow
It's also, I liked it so much, I bought a second copy of because it came out, funnily enough, in Australia, and the Australian release has more special features. So I was like, well, I'm going to get another one because I want to watch even more behind the scenes. And as we discussed, mostly in Australia, we can't get anything here. So it's really awesome. But yeah, I was just like, this movie's right up my alley. It's weird and it's intense and it's in your face.
I may have to borrow your disc.
Yeah, it's also kind of subtle but also not. And I'm just like, what the hell?
And my mum will like it because it's got Sam Neill.
Oh, I don't know if she will.
Okay. Not that kind of movie?
No, it's not that kind of movie.
Okay.
It's a bit more, when we're talking about dangerous movies.
It's a dangerous movie.
This is one of those kind of movies.
Maybe I'll watch it first.
Yeah, you watch it first, and then you kind of
suss it out.
And then see if it's dad level. Then
maybe my dad might.
Your dad might
go
be
from there.
Even your dad might be like, "What the hell is this?"
No. My dad liked last. It was
he likes weird movies.
He likes weird movies. What's the Lars von Trier one that he watched?
Antichrist.
The serial killer one.
Oh, the House
that Jack built.
He liked that.
Okay, yeah, he might be okay.
His favorite movie is Angel Heart. He's okay to go to uncomfortable places.
The weirder the better for my dad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, I really liked it. It looked fantastic, sounded fantastic. Just performances were incredible. Isabelle Adjani, great actress, and she gives one of the most intense performances I've ever seen. And then it starts introducing these weirder elements, and I'm just like, what the hell? This is awesome. It's one of those movies you don't see anymore. Not in terms of Event Horizon, where you're like, oh, they don't make these big budget sci-fi.
It's risks.
It's a risky, weird, dangerous movie made on a relatively small budget by an international cast and crew during the Cold War, and by a Polish director who wanted to make a movie about divorce, which he was going through at the time, but also the communist bloc, which Poland was part of, and his frustration with not being able to do things as a Polish filmmaker under the Soviet communist system. And so it's got all these weird elements all fighting each other and all blending together. And
excellent.
I loved it. So it's not a traditional horror movie, but it does have horror elements, and it was really kind of creepy and disturbing. And so it kind of fit in with, my other horror movie viewings of the month.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was freaking awesome.
Excellent.
So that's one of those movies that paid off blind buying. And it's one of those movies that, when you hear about movies on the internet and people are like, you have to watch this, and then you watch it, and then you're like, I don't see what the...
Yeah.
This was like a case of, I understand why people are talking about this.
Excellent. One I'll have to borrow a few and give it a watch.
I'll bring
Sounds
it around
good.
because it's awesome. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I rambled on too long.
No. You say sorry, I say thank you because I got 3 more movies I have to watch.
Well, I mean, I got a whole bunch of other horror movies I watched, but we won't talk about that.
Maybe an extra episode we'll dive in.
No, I think just
the important ones we got.
I think that's enough. But I think from now on, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where it's just like we'll watch whatever and then we'll talk about it, and because we want to, because I love movies, literally the only thing I like doing.
Yeah.
And I want to share that with people, and so we'll kind of watch cool stuff and talk about it.
Well, hopefully I'll get started on Chucky soon.
Yeah,
and some other sort of anime stuff I've been watching.
Have you watched Chainsaw Man yet?
I've watched the first episode.
Okay,
I'm still waiting for the dubs and stuff.
There's only 3 episodes out. Yeah.
So we'll talk about some more varied, interesting stuff in the next few weeks. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Yeah. That's it. Thanks for listening, everybody. You can get
Spooktober is over.
Enter Spookvember. Thanks for listening, everybody. You can catch other episodes on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Please like and share the Tuesday Review Facebook page, the Twitter, and the Instagram at Tuesday Review AU.
Yep.
We'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.